Hello friends, in continuation with the general characters of the fungi, now in this lecture we are going to learn about the range of thallus organization found in fungi, the cell structure and the mode of nutrition that is present in the group fungi. To begin with, we have to study the thallus organization. Now what is a thallus? A thallus is an undifferentiated vegetative tissue. It usually names the entire body of a multicellular, non-moving organism in which there is no organization of the tissue into organs. It can be a group of cells ranging from unicellular to a complex unbranched tree-like filament. The thallus organization can be found in lower group of entities like algae, fungi, some liverworts and lichens. Here in this lecture, we are going to learn about the thallus organization of the fungi. The thallus organization of the fungi can be unicellular or multicellular. The unicellular organization is found in several fungi which show motile zoospores in their life cycle. In kingdom fungi, only the chytrids have both sexual and asexual motile flagella, which are generally posterior whiplash type. To begin with the unicellular thallus organization, we find in lower groups of fungi like chytrids, the thallus is more or less a spherical single cell structure. Now this single cell thallus structure behaves like a reproductive unit and in other time it behaves as a vegetative unit. The type of fungi which shows this type of thallus organization are known as holocarpic. Here the whole cell is behaving like a thallus. Now at the same time the single thallus, single cell does not behave as a reproductive unit and the vegetative unit. That means they have separate period in their life cycle. Example we find in the case of Plasmodiophora. Now Plasmodiophora has a vegetative phase which consists of naked multinucleated amoeboid mass of protoplast. This is termed as plasmodium. The protoplast of the diploid plasmodium cleaves to form resting spores and these spores germinate and ultimately give rise to the vegetative body. Another very common example of the unicellular thallus is the yeast cell, because yeast we all know is a unicellular eukaryotic cell which has got every cell organelle within itself. Moving on to the second type of thallus organization, which is multicellular. In the case of fungi, we also call it filamentous. The vast majority of the fungus have a filamentous thallus where we find the thallus originates, or rather we say the filament originates from the germination of a spore. This substratum, on getting the favorable condition, become a very good source of carbon and nitrogen for the fungus to develop, to propagate. The spores of most of the fungi give rise to the fluffy thallus, which consists of the cottony mass of fine branched filament. These long fine branched filament are known as hyphae. In singular, we call them hypha. The tangled mass of the hyphae is known as mycelium. So we say the structural unit of mycelium is the hyphae and numerous hyphae together makes up mycelium. And this mycelium is the ultimate thallus organization of the multicellular or filamentous fungi. Such type of fungi are known as eucarpic fungi. Coming on to the structure of the hyphae, let us see what is a hyphae and how does it form the mycelium. Now hyphae are usually colorless, particularly those which are embedded inside the substratum. The aerial hyphae may be colored. They may have the color of black, orange, yellow, red, blue and sometimes brown. But this pigment does not play any role in the physiology of the fungus. Sometimes we find that the fungal cell wall may contain melanin, and this melanin helps to overcome the ultraviolet radiation which is coming from the sunlight. The hyphae grows from the apical region because the tips of the hyphae grow, they never grow in their breadth, they always grow in their length. Hyphae are of three types: uninucleated when there is a single nucleus, they can be binucleated when there is two nucleus, or it can be multinucleated when we find numerous nuclei are present inside the hyphae. Here you can see the structure of a multinucleated hyphae. The aggregation and the modification of the mycelium. The mycelium so formed by the tangled mass of the hyphae again form some aggregations which are very important structural components of any fungus. The first modification we find in the case of fungi is planctonchyma. The planctonchyma, here the mycelium is organized into a loosely or compactly woven tissue, and this type of organization can be of two types. The first type is known as prosenchyma. In prosenchyma, they are loosely woven tissue and the hyphae are placed parallel to each other. Here we can see the picture of the prosenchyma, where we find the hyphae or the tube-like thin filamentous structure, they are placed parallel to each other. The second type is known as pseudoparenchyma. In the case of pseudoparenchyma, we find that they are compactly woven tissue. Here we can see the picture of the pseudoparenchyma where the cells are compactly placed or the hyphae are compactly placed to one another. Now, why this is pseudo? Because this is not a true parenchyma what we find in the plant cells. The second modification of the mycelium is sclerotia. Now, sclerotia are hard pseudoparenchymatous cells and they are the resting bodies formed in some plant pathogenic fungi, for example, claviceps. Here we find the picture of the sclerotia which is black in color. These are hard structures. These sclerotia is very important to overcome the environmental stress condition, and therefore the fungi can survive in long duration of drought or when there is scarcity of water. The higher fungi such as ergots, the sclerotia become detached and they remain dormant until the favorable conditions come and they mature into vegetative cells. Pseudosclerotia is another type of modification found in the case of fungi. In pseudosclerotia, we find them at the base of various fruit bodies of the higher fungi. In polyporous species, we find that the pseudosclerotia are formed below the soil surface and are composed of soil particles surrounded by hyphal aggregation. This is the picture of the pseudosclerotium where we find it is not having any proper structure or shape. The third type of aggregation is aprosorium. Now, in the case of aprosorium, we find that it is a simple or lobed structure of the hyphae when the germ tube is pressing against a particular plant cell. Here we can see the conidia is developing into a lobed structure which can press against the wall of the plant cell. Here this is the aprosorium and this is the conidia. The conidia giving rise to the germ tube and this germ tube develops into aprosorium, and therefore this aprosorium becomes the organ which can give the force onto the plant cell, and therefore the fungi like Colletotrichum falcatum germ tubes from conidia results from the production of a hypha which forms aprosorium, and it comes in contact with any hard surface and develops into the pathogenic structure. The haustoria is another modification of the mycelium found in fungi. This comes from the Latin word haustor, and haustor means drinker. These haustoria are hyphal structures or outgrowths of the somatic hyphae which are penetrating the host cell to absorb the nutrients so that the pathogenic fungi can survive. The hyphal branch are said to function as haustorium. They become thin and pointed while they penetrate inside the host cell and expand in the cell cavity to form the wider, simpler, branched haustorium. Here we can see the structure of the fungal hyphae, which is getting inside the plant cell, and after it gets inside the plant cell, we find it is penetrating inside and develops into the larger structure. This is again a picture of the haustoria, which is getting inside the plant's epidermal cell and then spreads like a network, and therefore it takes on the nutrients which is there in the plant cell and it becomes pathogenic. Hypopodia is another type of modification, or we can say an aggregation of the fungal mycelium. It is a small appendage with 2 or more cells in length on external hyphae and functions as absorbing structure. The terminal cell of Hypopodium is expanded and rounded, or sometimes it is pointed. Sometimes it produces haustorium, which is found in the case of many ectophytic fungi. Going on to the structure of the fungi, now the basic structure of the fungi is the hyphae, or in singular we call it hypha. Now hyphae is a multi-branch tubular cell filled with the cytoplasm. The tube itself may be either continuous or it may be divided into compartments by the presence of the cross walls. These cross walls are known as septa. Singular we call it septum. Therefore, the hyphae can be non-septate when there is no septation. That means we call the hyphae as cenocytic, having numerous nuclei in a tube-like structure. On the other hand, when the hyphae is having septum, that is the cross walls between them, it is known as septate hyphae. In that case, each cell may contain one or many nuclei depending on the type of fungus or the type of organism or a group it belongs to. The cells of the fungi are similar in structure to those of many other organisms, and the other cell organelles that are present are endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi apparatus, ribosomes, liposomes. So these are the different cell structures we can find inside the hyphae. So there is presence of cell wall, cell membrane, Golgi apparatus, there is a nucleus because it is a eukaryotic cell, there is mitochondria, there is endoplasmic reticulum. So we begin with the first component which is found in the hyphae is the septum, or the cross wall, which can divide the hyphal cells into different compartments. This septum divides the hyphae into different cells, and septum are usually perforated by pores. The different type of pores are present. We will talk about the types of pores that are found in the septum later on, and these pores are large enough for the various molecules to move rapidly between the hyphal cells, but the mitochondria, the nuclei, they are not able to pass from one cell to the other. In mating interactions between filamentous basidiomycota, the nuclei of one parent often invade the hypha of the other parent because the septa are degraded ahead of incoming nuclei to allow their passage through the existing hyphae. And once the incoming nuclei are established, the septa is reformed. So, before reproduction, the septa is degraded, and after the reproduction is over, the septa formation again takes place. In the absence of septa, both mitochondria and nuclei can readily be translocated along the hypha, and this happens in the case of cenocytic hypha. The types of pores that are present in the septa can be of two. First one is the simple pore, which is there, or the septa with one or few pores is known as a simple pore. Example is Ascomycotina. Here you can see the picture of the simple pore which is present, and the second type of pore which is found is dolly pore. In the case of dolly pore, we find it is composed of a pore cap surrounding a septal swelling and septal pore, and this is the picture of the dolly pore septum of Basidiomycotina, where we find the septal plate is there, the septum pore is there, and therefore this is a specialized type of pore found in hyphae. Coming on to the cell wall of the fungi, we find that the fungal cell wall is made of chitin, glucan, polysaccharides, mucopolysaccharide, waxes and pigments. The glucans that are present in the fungal cell wall are endotoxin-like substances similar to the LPS we find in gram-negative bacteria because they can stimulate the immune system. The fungal cell wall may also contain melanin, which gives the protection against the ultraviolet radiation. The presence of the proteins in the fungal cell wall is also very essential for the pathogenic as well as for the saprophytic fungi to survive, because these proteins help for the purpose of adhesion. Because of these proteins, they are able to adhere to the living tissue in the case of parasites or to the dead tissue in the case of saprophytes. Also, these proteins help in the process of biofilm formation and cell adhesion. For example, in the case of Saccharomyces cerevisiae, which undergoes a process of mating within A cell and the alpha cell. Now, A cell shows presence of A agglutinin and the alpha cell shows presence of alpha agglutinin. And because of these two agglutinin, the A cell and the alpha cell of the yeast, they mate together. So, this is a picture of the fungal cell wall. Here we can find the presence of the membrane proteins within the cell membrane or the plasma membrane, and above to this we find presence of the chitin, and above chitin we find the presence of the glucans, and the glucans are covered up by the manoproteins. Coming up to the structure of chitin. Now, chitin is a chained polymer of beta-1,4 N-acetyl glucosamine. It is found in all type of fungal cell wall, and this is responsible to give the strength to the fungal cell wall. The microfibrils of chitin gives the shape to the cell. In the case of yeast cells, the microfibrils are short and thick. In the case of hyphal wall, these microfibrils are long and interwoven. Glucan, another component of the cell wall, contain beta chain glucan. Now, glucan are polysaccharides that contain the glucose as their structural components. The walls of Ascomycetes and Basidiomycetes, they contain beta-1,3 glucan with branching of beta-1,6 glucan, whereas there are some fungi which can have alpha-1,4 glucan. Chitosan is another glucosamine which is a chained beta-1,4 glucosamine, and it is a result of continuous deacetylation of the chitin. This is a very specialized component found in the walls of Zygomycetes, and it can also be there in the spore walls of Ascospores. Coming on to the another component of the cell, that is plasma membrane. Now, plasma membrane cell structure is very similar to the other eukaryotic membrane. The only exception is presence of ergosterol, which is replacing the cholesterol of the animal cell membrane. Rest of the thing in the plasma membrane remains same. Here you can see the picture of the fungal cell membrane. Here the yellow colored components are the ergosterol, and after that we find the chitin, the glucan and the manoprotein. So, this is basically how the membrane is associated with the cell wall. Moving on to the endoplasmic reticulum, we find that it has got very important enzymes which are involved in the synthesis of ergosterol, which is a component of the fungal cell membrane. And therefore, if we have any strategy or method to disturb the endoplasmic reticulum, the ergosterol will not be synthesized, and therefore we can inhibit the growth of the fungus, and that is how the antifungal drugs have been designed. Coming on to the vacuole, which is again a character mimicking the plant cell, it contains many small molecules and biosynthetic precursor such as basic amino acids and polyphosphate granules. Golgi apparatus and dictyosomes are another cell organelles that we find in the case of fungi. Golgi apparatus, we find that it may have the paranuclear dictyosomes with 4 to 5 cisternae. In the case of Oomycetes, the Golgi apparatus consist of stacks of folded membrane functioning in secretion. Its major function of this Golgi apparatus is to process and package the macromolecules, which is proteins, and transport them in the cell. In addition to this, we find numerous types of fungal spores which can be zoospores, which is given out from the zoosporangia, or sporangiospores. They can be conidia, they can be chlamydospores, they can be arthrospores, uridiospores, ascospores or basidiospores. So, different type of spores are present in different types of fungi. Coming on to the third basic component that we have to learn today is the nutrition. Now, nutrition, unlike plants, the fungi are strictly heterotrophs in their mode of nutrition. They are non-photosynthetic, they do not have chlorophyll, so they are not producers, rather they are consumers. The fungi either grow on a living matter, that means they are parasites, or they are growing on a dead decaying matter, that means they are saprophytes. So, here in this case we find that the fungi can utilize the insoluble carbohydrates such as starch, cellulose and hemicellulose, as well as the complex hydrocarbons such as lignin. On the other hand, the fungi can also use protein as a source of carbon and nitrogen. To use the insoluble carbohydrate and proteins, the fungi first digest these polymers extracellularly and then they absorb it. So, it is an extracellular digestion process seen in the case of fungi. The food enters inside the fungal cell wall, but it has to be in the solution form because it has to enter the hyphae. Some fungi produce special root-like structures known as rhizoids, which anchor the thallus to the growth surface and probably absorb food. Many other parasitic fungi have got a specialized structure which is known as haustoria. Regarding the nutrition, all the fungi exhibits heterotrophic mode of nutrition and they are known as saprophytes. That means those organisms which are growing on dead decaying matter. The example is mushroom and yeast. In saprophytic mode of nutrition, we find that they decompose the organic matter. They are responsible for the dead and decomposition of the foodstuff, and in turn they produce the spores in large number. The spores are means of dissemination so that they can be going to other places where the fungi can prosper, can grow in number. The decomposition products of the protein are used by the fungi as nitrogen source. The chemical elements such as phosphorus, sulfur, potassium, magnesium, small quantities of iron, zinc, manganese and copper are needed by most fungi for vigorous growth. The elements such as calcium, molybdenum and gallium are required by few species of fungi. Oxygen and hydrogen are absolute requirement. Many fungi deficient in thiamine and biotin, they obtain these vitamins from the environment, whereas most of the fungi are able to synthesize all other vitamins that are necessary for their growth and reproduction. The second type of mode of nutrition seen in the case of fungi is parasitic mode of nutrition. Here the fungi grow on the living matter and as a result they cause disease. Now this living matter can be a plant cell when they cause a plant disease, or it can be an animal cell when they are causing the disease in animals or to humans. Among the most common and widespread diseases of plants caused by fungi are downy mildew, which is taking place in grapes, onion, tobacco, powdery mildew, which is taking place in cherry, apple, peach, etc., the smuts, the rust, then apple scab, brown rot of some stone fruits and various leaf spots. The infection of the plant takes place when the spores of the pathogenic fungus fall on the leaves or the stem of the susceptible host and they germinate. Each spore now produces a germ tube. The tube grows on the surface of the host until it finds an opening. Then the tube enters the host cell and then it enters between the cells of the host and forms a mycelial network. The parasites which is growing on the living tissue therefore can be growing on the surface of the living tissue or they can be growing inside the living tissue. If the thallus of the parasitic fungi grows on the surface of the host, then it is known as ectoparasite. but if the thallus is growing inside the plant cell, it is hidden and therefore it is known as endoparasite. Here you can see the picture of the ectoparasite where we find they are growing on the surface of the leaf, and this is the picture of the endoparasite where we find the fungus is growing inside the cells of the plant cell as round black structures. Now let us see the advantage of the ecto and the endoparasites. If we talk about the advantage, the ectoparasites, they have the ease of dispersal because they are present outside. They are safe from the host immune system. Whereas in the case of endoparasites which are present inside the plant, they have the ease of feeding because they are getting all the nutrition from the plant cell. They are protected from the external environment. They are safer from the natural enemies. Coming on to the disadvantage of the ectoparasite, we find that they are vulnerable to the natural enemies because they are exposed to the external environment, and for them feeding becomes more difficult. Whereas in the case of endoparasites, they are vulnerable to the host immune system, and therefore this is a big disadvantage for the endoparasite, and their dispersal is more difficult. Now there are many parasites or fungus which grow on humans, and as a result they cause disease. The human disease caused by fungi includes athlete feet, ringworm, aspergillosis and many other. The yeast, which is Candida albicans, is a normal inhabitant of the human mouth, throat, colon and reproductive organ. It does not cause any disease when it is in ecological balance with other members of the digestive system. However, with age, disease and normal hormonal changes that is taking place, the Candida albicans grow in a manner that cannot be controlled by the body's defense mechanism, and as a result, it results in candidiasis. Mycorrhiza is another type of nutritional mode we find in the case of fungi, which takes into account the association with other biological entities. Now, mycorrhiza is a non-disease producing association because here it is an association with the plants or the animals or the insects, but it does not cause any damage to the other biological entity. 90% of the land plants rely on mycorrhizal fungus, especially for mineral nutrition like phosphorus, and in return the fungus receives the nutrients from the plant. During winter, when day length is shortened and exposure to sunlight is reduced, some plants produce few or no nutrients, thus depend totally on the fungi for sugar, nitrogen compound and other nutrients which the fungi are able to absorb from the waste material present in the soil. And we already know the mycorrhizal association can be of two types as ectomycorrhiza and endomycorrhiza. The last mode of nutrition exhibited by the fungi is predation. That means the fungi which have developed a mechanism for trapping the other organisms which can be amoeba, roundworm, nematodes and rotifers. The mycelium of these fungi, they secrete a type of protein which is adhesive, and therefore they catch the nematodes. As a result, the nematodes are in contact with the hyphae or the fungi. Once the passing animal is caught, a penetration tube grows out of the hyphae and penetrates into the host soft body. These hostorium-like growth branches and then secretes enzyme that quickly kill the animal, and then the cytoplasm serves as the food for the fungus. Here we can see the picture of a nematode being captured by a fungus which is known as Arthrobotrys. Now here we find how the loop is being formed by the fungus and an entangled mass of hyphae is being formed so that the nematode which is captured is not able to come out and become the prey for the fungus. Therefore, we can conclude that fungi in regard to the thallus organization can be multicellular, can be unicellular, and in regard to mode of nutrition, they are strictly heterotrophs and they are decomposers in nature.